Today, we are going to look at one of the most powerful, dramatic, and eye-opening stories ever told. It is a story told by Jesus himself, the parable of the wicked tenants. This is not just an ancient story about farming and land. It is a profound look at human nature, God's incredible patience, and what happens when we push His grace too far. So grab a cup of coffee, settle in, and let's dive right into this timeless story together. To understand this story, we have to picture the scene that Jesus painted for His listeners. In the ancient Middle East, vineyards were incredibly valuable and took a tremendous amount of hard work to establish. In this story, Jesus tells us about a certain landowner, a man who worked tirelessly to plant a magnificent vineyard. He didn't just throw some seeds in the dirt and walk away. No, he planted choice vines, built a strong stone fence all around it to protect it from wild animals and thieves, dug a deep pit to press the grapes into wine, and even built a tall watchtower so guards could keep a safe lookout over the property. Every single detail was carefully planned. It was a masterpiece of agriculture, designed to produce a rich and abundant harvest. But the owner wasn't planning to work the land himself full-time. Once everything was set up and ready to go, he decided to rent the vineyard out to some tenant farmers, local workers who would take care of the daily farming. Then, the owner packed his bags and went away on a very long journey to another country. Everything seemed to be in order. The tenants had a wonderful place to work and make a living, and the owner trusted them to do the right thing. Time passed. The seasons changed, and the vines flourished under the sun and rain. Soon, harvest time arrived. The moment when the grapes were ripe, sweet, and ready to be picked. Naturally, the landowner sent some of his trusted servants to the vineyard. Their job was very simple: to collect the owner's rightful share of the fruit from the tenant. After all, the tenants didn't own the land. They were just renting it. Giving a portion of the harvest back to the owner was part of their agreement. But when the owner's servants arrived at the vineyard gate, things took a terrible and shocking turn. Instead of welcoming the servants and handing over the fruit, the tenant farmers showed their true colors. Greed had taken over their hearts. They looked at the huge harvest, and instead of thinking about honesty, they thought about keeping everything for themselves. They grabbed the first servant, beat him up mercilessly, and sent him away completely empty-handed. Can you imagine how shocking that would be? You send a peaceful messenger to collect what is rightfully yours, and they beat him? You would think the owner would immediately send an army, right? But look at what the owner does instead. He shows unbelievable patience. He decides to give them another chance. He sends a second group of servants, even more than the first time, hoping the tenants would realize their mistake and come to their senses. But the wicked tenants didn't feel any remorse. They treated the second group of servants even worse than the first. Some they beat, some they insulted, and some they cruelly killed. Day after day, messenger after messenger was sent, and one by one they were rejected, beaten, or murdered. At this point in the story, every listener in the crowd must have felt a mix of anger and disbelief. Why doesn't the owner punish these evil men? They must have wondered. But the landowner's heart was full of mercy and a desperate hope for reconciliation. He sat down and thought long and hard. He realized he had tried everything. He had sent ordinary servants. He had sent extra help, and none of it worked. Then, a final thought came to him. He had one treasure left, his only son, whom he loved deeply and dearly. The owner looked at his son and said to himself, "Surely they will respect my son. Even if they are stubborn, they won't dare touch the owner's own flesh and blood." It was a risky move, born out of profound love. The father sent his beloved, innocent son on that journey, hoping against hope that the tenants would finally show some basic human decency and respect. The son arrives at the vineyard gate. He doesn't come with guards or weapons. He comes simply as the representative of his father. But when those greedy, wicked tenant farmers saw the son walking up the path, instead of feeling ashamed, their minds went down a dark and evil path. They looked at each other and whispered, "Look, this is the heir, the one who will inherit everything when the old man dies. If we kill him, there will be no one left to claim the property. Come on, let's kill him, and the entire vineyard will be ours forever." Pure greed had completely blinded their minds and hardened their hearts. Without a second thought, they rushed forward, grabbed the innocent son, dragged him roughly out of the safety of the vineyard into the dirt, and brutally killed him. When Jesus finished telling this story to the crowd of people listening that day, he asked them a very direct question. When the owner of the vineyard comes back, what do you think he will do to those wicked tenant farmers? The people listening immediately understood the justice of the situation and replied, "He will bring those wretched men to a wretched end, and he will rent the vineyard out to other tenants, who will give him his share of the fruit at harvest time." And they were entirely right. But let's pause for a moment and look beneath the surface of this story, because Jesus wasn't just talking about a piece of real estate or a bad farming arrangement. Every single part of this story has a deep spiritual meaning. The vineyard represents God's people and His kingdom on earth. The landowner represents God the Father, who created everything with love and care. The tenant farmers represented the religious leaders of Israel at that time, who had been given the responsibility of leading God's people, but had become proud, greedy, and corrupt. The servants who were beaten and killed represent the prophets of the Old Testament, holy men sent by God to guide the people back to the right path, only to be rejected and persecuted. And the beloved Son, that represents Jesus Christ Himself. Jesus was looking right at the religious leaders of His day, warning them ahead of time about what they were planning to do to Him. He knew that in just a short time, they would drag Him outside the city walls of Jerusalem and nail Him to a cross. He was telling them His own future, right down to the betrayal and murder. Now, you might be wondering, what does this story have to do with my life today? We might not be literal farmers running a grape vineyard, but in a very real sense, we are all tenants. Everything we have in this life, our time, our talents, our families, our health, our finances, and our very breath, is a gift on loan from God. He is the ultimate owner, and we are simply the managers. The big question this story asks us today is, what are we doing with what God has given us? Are we producing good fruit things like love, kindness, patience, honesty, and generosity? Or are we acting like we own everything ourselves, keeping all our blessings for our own selfish desires and pushing God out of the picture? This story is a gentle wake-up call, reminding us to check our hearts, let go of greed, and live with gratitude for the one who gave us everything. Thank you so much for watching today's video. If this story spoke to your heart, please hit that like button, share it with a friend who might need to hear it today, and subscribe to the video